But one day, as Shamisen through the wood, his cruel aunt, disguised in a devil mask, lay in wait for him. Now at last, she would be able to kill him and carry out her evil plan.
And so the Japanese storyteller reaches the exciting climax of his fairy tale. His young listeners have forgotten that they are standing on a street in Kyoto, Japan. They are far away in a magic land which is visited by children of all countries. And now the story is over, and it is time to take up the story of real life again. Here are Yona Kawaii and his sister Mitsu, real children on their way home from school, in a real country called Japan. And the story of their life as they live it every day is just as interesting as any fairy tale, and in some ways, just as strange to us Americans. Although some Japanese customs would seem odd to us, there are just as many which are not so different from our own. What is life like for a Japanese boy and girl living here in this ancient city named Kyoto, a city which, unlike most Japanese cities, was not greatly damaged by war? In a Japanese home, a garden is almost like part of the house. In one of the rooms opening on the garden is the workshop of the children's father, who is a silk weaver. Mr. Kawaii admires Yona's drawing, and Mrs. Kawaii is pleased that her son is already showing artistic ability. Someday, perhaps, the boy will join his father in the work here at the shop. For Mr. Kawaii, the day's work at the looms is not finished. Since the war, times have been hard, and the Kawaii family has had to work long hours in order to survive. In fact, the whole family, including grandmother, are experienced and skilled weavers. Today, the textile business is the most profitable business in Japan, and this family is well off in comparison with most. Even before the war, textile and clothing manufacturing employed more people than any other industry, most of them in small shops located in the home, where a whole family works together. Mrs. Kawaii's sister, the children's aunt, works and lives here too. The children's uncle is another family member who works in the shop. Although the looms are hand-operated, mechanical devices help in the weaving. The looms weave the beautiful silk brocades from a pattern made of heavy paper, with holes punched in it, very much like the music roll of an old-fashioned player piano. The children's aunt stops work early to start preparations for dinner. In pre-war Japan, families like this one would have had servants to do the household tasks, but today few families can afford such luxuries. Soon Mrs. Kawaii joins her sister in the kitchen. The Japanese prepare simple meals and eat quickly without ceremony. Unlike the Chinese, who are famous as cooks, they look upon eating as a necessity rather than a pleasure. Cooking is usually done over a wood fire. Gas stoves, particularly since the war, are expensive. The Japanese are very fond of fresh vegetables, and these are usually chopped and then cooked lightly, as in the famous Japanese dish, sukiyaki. In Japan, fish, as well as many other dishes, are grilled over an open charcoal brazier. Meat is scarce and expensive, and fish provide most of the necessary proteins in a family's diet. And now the family sit down to supper. Odd as it may seem, they sit on the straw mats which cover the floor. There are no chairs in most Japanese homes, but the tables are low, and so it is really quite comfortable. After supper, Japanese children do what all school children have to do, homework. They spend much more time on it than American children do because their written language is so difficult to master. Like Chinese, it is made up of many complicated symbols instead of an alphabet. These are called characters. They are hard to draw and even harder to remember. It is easy to see why handwriting with a brush or fide is still looked upon as one of the fine arts in Japan. While Yona and Mitsu do homework, their father carries on his business. He not only makes fine silk cloth, but he must sell it too. In Japan, even a business conference is an occasion for tea drinking, and the transactions are carried on in an atmosphere of politeness and ceremony. As is customary in the Orient, arithmetic is done on the abacus, the oldest adding machine in the world. And it can multiply and divide too, once you know how to work it. Grandmother has her whole duties, in addition to her work in the shop. Sliding screens serve as both doors and windows, even in the colder parts of Japan. They are made of strong tissue paper, glued to a wooden framework, and the little rectangles are often in need of repair. It's time to go to sleep. Mrs. Kawaii transforms the room into a bedroom by getting the children's futon out of the closet. To us, these futons don't look much like beds. They are more like our comforters or quilts. And so, their homework all done, Mitsu and Yona get ready to go to bed. The New Year's holidays are approaching, and tomorrow their aunt is going to take them to the city of Nara to visit one of Japan's most beautiful parks. Nara is about 20 miles from Kyoto, and so they'll have to get up early to take the train. Next morning, the children and their aunt arrive at Nara Station. As soon as they enter the park, they go to one of the many shrines there to pay their religious respects. The two major religions in Japan today are still Buddhism and Shintoism. Only one person out of every 200 is a Christian. The park itself is very beautiful. It lies on the slopes of a range of hills, wooded with the picturesquely shaped evergreen trees for which Japan is famous. This gigantic statue of Buddha is called the Dai Butsu. It was cast over 1,200 years ago. On the day before New Year's, the preparations for the celebration begin. First come the decorations. Pine sprigs on either side of the door symbolize long life because they are evergreen. The shimenawa, which is placed over the door, is also made of objects which signify good wishes for a long, healthy, and prosperous life. Meanwhile, Mr. Kawaii hangs up the New Year's scroll or kakamono, which expresses good wishes to all for the coming year. The mochi cake is as important to the Japanese at New Year's as a Christmas tree is to us at Christmas time. The cake is made of an expensive kind of rice and is decorated with an orange and pieces of dried seaweed, because the names for these things in Japanese are puns on the words that mean long life and happiness. That afternoon, Mitsu and Yona, together with their mother and aunt, go to the nearby city of Osaka to see the puppet show or bunrak as a special holiday treat. The show itself has been in existence for 300 years, and it is still presented in traditional style. An orchestra provides musical background and sound effects. While the puppet characters act out their dramas of love, hate, and comedy, a reader chants the story in ancient classical language. But he is more than a reader. He is an actor who plays all the roles in this show. He's hero, heroine, and villain in turn, and he feels all their emotions with them. He weeps, makes love, and gets angry, and he can move the audience to laughter or tears. The theater manager is a friend of the family, and so after the show is over, the children go backstage for a visit. It's fun to meet the puppeteers who have been entertaining them all afternoon, to say nothing of the musicians. The shamisen is the most popular of Japanese musical instruments. It is a little like our banjo, but has only 3 strings. Then, Yona and Mitsu have the great privilege of meeting the chief puppeteer, the oldest and most famous one in all Japan. They have lots of questions to ask him, and so he offers to show them how all the puppets work. The next day is New Year's, and Mitsu and Yona get up early in the morning to play the traditional New Year's games. Most boys, like Yona, have special holiday kites to fly. The girls, dressed in new, colorful kimono, play battledore and shuttlecock. The battledores, or bats, are especially ornamental for the occasion. Meanwhile, Mr. and Mrs. Kawaii receive their first New Year's callers. This custom of friendly visiting is so universal on New Year's Day in Japan that many households cannot receive all their guests, and receptacles are placed at the entrance of the house to receive the calling cards. All in all, it is a time of great friendliness. All enmities are forgotten, foes become friends, and work is taboo. It is the greatest holiday in the Japanese year, and the celebration lasts at least 3 days, and sometimes for more than a week. Cold sake wine, flavored with Japanese pepper and medicinal herbs for health, is served with great ceremony to all guests. This otoso, as it is called, is sipped in a very serious and polite manner because the ceremony expresses mutually sincere wishes for good health during the coming year. In the evening, after the guests have gone, the Kawaii family get together for games and fun all by themselves. Yona and Mitsu play with the new pinball game that their father gave them as a New Year's present. Yona wins, and as a prize, his father gives him an orange. time for a game of cards in which everyone can join. The name of this game is Uta Garuta. It means poetry cards, and it is played traditionally at New Year's. Each card contains the second half of a short Japanese poem. One member of the group is the reader, who reads the first half of a poem. Each player tries to be first in finding the card with the second half of the poem on it. But one member of the family gets bored with the game and has his own way of breaking it up. And so, New Year's Day is over for the Kauai family. Now they can look forward to another year of peace, when their innate love of family life can find a happy expression into that new year somewhere in the future, when they will once again take their place in the family of nations.